those three together, and then there was just the negative space, the space that's empty that is just a reality for women, for my friend, and so to me, it's a piece it's an empowerment piece, but it also does show, you know, it's like a woman's journey. It's kind of what has happened to not just my friend, but when it happens to her, it happens to me. And when it happens to me, it happens to anyone. It's kind of like a universal feeling of struggle and victory. Yeah. So that would be an example, like a feminist piece.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I noticed in our bios that in 1990 we both created our very first piece of artwork, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah.
Wow.
So we have like little things that tie our work together and keep us kind of kindred and on our path. I know that your process is probably a little different than mine and what inspires you. I'd like to hear about it.
Kelly? I think mine is less heavy and less symbolic, I guess. It comes from simply appreciation of trees as it starts. Because woody plants, and most notably trees, as far as I know, are the only living things that record their life in their tissue. So if a tree is damaged at some point, that scar will remain buried in layers, manual layers of the tree as it grows, and it can be recovered or recognized as having happened. So it's a part of the history of the individual tree. And that sort of idea always just fascinates me. It goes not only for things like that, but for insect infestations or woodpecker pecks, and the way a tree grows naturally by shooting out a branch at some point, or may show up in the stresses of a piece of wood that are expressed when it dries out. It cracks, it forms, changes shape. That's part of the history too. And so I sort of feel driven in a way to look for evidence of history in a tree or a log and do something to it which preserves it and brings it out so that others can do it too. But not only that, but to make a piece which is beautiful or at least interesting, interesting to me. So that's the main thing. And that sort of is the derivation of making single pieces, a wooden piece like a bowl or a vase. But in the last few years, I've been trying to go beyond simple object, create more complicated things, maybe multi-component things. And I have been struggling with that a little bit when Jen and I started to get to know each other, and her work inspired me. The way she assembles found pieces together. We both like to walk in the woods, look for natural objects which are interesting. And sort of that, in a way, ties us together. Jen goes much farther, as she described, in using her pieces as metaphors or symbols that I have in the past yet to. I've got no sort of driving philosophy on what I do. I think I let each piece of wood sort of tell me what I should do with it, what it wants to be.
You had said, like, when we were talking about this, you said, like, you find the beauty in the piece of wood. You find this piece, and then you uncover its beauty and bring its beauty out. And it's as simple and as beautiful as that. Well, everything has to have a big meaning. But yeah, we were talking about, we kind of share a love for walking in the woods and being inspired by nature. And much of, I think when I was thinking about this, it all came down to wood. Richard loves wood and finds it beautiful, and I love wood, and I find it fully both incorporated. It's dominant in our work. You can just kind of come at it from different angles. We're talking about how, like, the boxes. My boxes started out brand shiny new ones, and where I came to find them beautiful and attractive was after they had been weathered, worn down, and desiccated and destroyed. And you do the opposite. Like, you find an old chunky piece that's kind of gnarly, and then you make it refined and refined. And then we put it on the wall and call it art.
I've noticed, though, that in this show in particular, you have very few natural objects. You do have, which intrigue me, doors, boxes, rust and tools that don't look as main components. Is that sort of coincidental, or have to do with where you're at these days?
Yeah, I would say that. So this work was mostly created between 2020, 2021, at a time where things felt pretty dark. It was COVID. I think we were struggling with different issues, and so I think my work felt a little more serious. And the boxes, I'll find something that I find just beautiful on its own, like an old door. So it starts with that, but there's also, it's a door and it can close and it can also open. So sometimes I'm attracted to that. And the boxes, I think, are kind of, and I've worked with doors for the last decade, but the boxes are kind of, I really was drawn to them more recently. And there's something about them that I think was, again, metaphorically speaking to me. And because I do the assemblage, I'll just kind of collect them, and then something else will come alongside of it and want to be incorporated. So I think they're just beautiful on their own, though. It's not a coincidence, probably. Well, there is a certain darkness and seriousness to the past couple of years in this work. And I think the heaviness of the metal tools and some of the themes really came up and out. Like this box, it's called Tulip. It's a flower, which is just beautiful and hopeful and fragile. But it's a flower that's made of broken glass and shattered glass and heavy, sharp metal. There's on this beautiful soft box that's had a life that who even knows the life of that box, and that the empty space with the little hole in the box, and the shadow, just all put together. It just kind of it invokes in me a question about fragility and life and what's precious.
I notice in another piece here in particular, sometimes in Torrington, you think about light shining on shadows and faces as an important component.
Absolutely, yeah. So I started out mostly, I did kinetic work, and that's the other thing. There's hardly any kinetic work here in this, but a lot of where I started and what I continue to do is kinetic. And so shadow and light always is something that I find exciting and playful, and sometimes gives a piece different meaning under different light. And this piece, Alive in Torrington, I really wanted it to have a playful feel. Again, that was made in 2020. My art studio is in Torrington, and Torrington got hit pretty hard by COVID. It's a little bit of a, struggling town. But that's where my art thrives and that's where I thrive. And I wanted to make a joyful piece. And so I had this old, I think it's a brake pad from a car. I don't know what it is, but I loved it. And I had the Burl Bowl custom fit around this brake pad, as you recall, Richard. And obviously the bowl is hollowed, so I could put a light in there. And then I just wanted something with swirling energy. So I made the copper pieces and then the lucite globes, which I just think are just, they do so many interesting things with the reflection. And so it does have kind of a joyful feel. And a statement that we're still alive. We're all still alive, and we can reach for joy and try to make something joyful in the worst of times. Even.
I'll just talk a minute about how how some of this has been inspired by collaboration. I've been making faces, bowls for a long time, but some of the pieces, some of the components of the pieces I've made here have been laying around my shop for a long time, and I hadn't yet figured out what to do with it. One example is the ladder-like thing over there called Felix, and it's made from two pieces of Oriental bittersweet that had wound around each other, and I cut them down and untwined them and stripped the bark off, revealing a really interesting surface underneath. But I didn't know what to do with it. And working with Jen has, number one, given me sort of some permission to be more free or wild than I would be otherwise. And she's been working with copper. And so I had been thinking maybe something ladder-like. I didn't know what to do with it. And then her idea of using copper brought it home to me. And then I realized that the right-hand helix formed by this plant, it matches the right-hand nature of DNA, normal DNA. Gee, well, that's an anthropomorphic connection. And so I sort of combined the copper idea and the ladder idea and the DNA idea to make a sort of something that had overtones of humanity. Of course, mine was male. but that's the kind of thing I might not have thought of or carried on without inspiration from Jen.
It's a whimsical and joyful too.
Yeah,
I feel like the helix is like, whoa, happy and unencumbered. Yeah. Well,
Are there any questions from the audience?
You said something about art needs to have rationale and meaning. What exactly do you mean by that? Rationale and meaning. I don't know whether you meant something about rationale and meaning.
Are you asking Jen?
I don't know who I'm asking. I don't remember who said it. Something about rationale and meaning.
It's more likely that Jen has a rationale behind her.
I don't think I said that.
Okay. Jen, you can answer.
Kind of maybe does a little bit, not all of the topics, but
so there's some rationale
there
and meaning.
is.
Yeah,
So,
there usually is to art. Yeah.
Well, I guess so I'm right now I'm looking at this piece over here that's called Week, and it's an old door that I found, and it's just a beautiful old weathered door. When I found that old pitchfork as well. I thought, oh, the pitchfork looks beautiful against the door, and then this lucite bar, which is that's where I start to incorporate like the the juxtaposition of old and new,
Mhm.
glassy, lucite looking material with the old wood and the old pitchfork. And it's just like, to me, it's the statement of the preciousness of resources. So, you've got like, it's like almost like glass.
Yeah.
There's so, instead of heaps of hay and wheat and plenty, we're starting to have to be conscientious about our environment because it is precious. And so, very
Yeah, very good.
stressed words, we truly do reap what we sow.
Yeah.
So it's a piece of artwork, but it's a reminder as well that we do have to be mindful, and we can't be selfish, and we reap what we sow in every arena. So that, that's an example of a message. And then, like, this is my this is probably the absolute most recent piece that I made. It's kind of my favorite. It's called Pronouns.
Okay, which one is it?
So right here. Thank you.
Yes. Yep.
I don't know if you looked at that closely or not, but it's, for me, it's a statement on gender equality and acceptance. There's so much going on right now with people, judging and needing to be better than, and not accepting that people have differences. And so the two pieces are fairly anatomical. There's a very female-looking one and a very male-looking one.
Yeah.
But and the point of it is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if someone's born biologically male and feels female. It doesn't matter. And why are people putting on other people? Why are we telling people how they're supposed to feel?
Right.
And that's just so upsetting to me. So the pronouns is like, let's just let people put themselves who they are and how they feel. So I'm just kind of applauding that movement and asking other people to do the same. Just live and let live, and laugh a little bit. Just let go.
And thank you for not mentioning his name.
Did I do a good job with that? Oh, I thought I said it, but yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, you may have a question.
Not a comment. First of all, I love that you guys met through Al, and I guess what occurs to me is because of that meeting, some different things came out of it. This is what we do to each other, and you say that the trees hold their history, but we all do it. That there's pieces of, we all hold everything that's happened to us. That's how we get to be where we are in every moment. We don't always see it. We don't slice us open and see what's in there, but it's so organically human. And Jen, your stuff is like, those things came together, and there was something else before. Like, you were something before you met Richard, and you created differently. We were all something different before we came into this room. Even if we didn't change careers, some of us have, but it's just that coming together of different things, and really awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I agree. I think that life and living makes us more beautiful rather than less beautiful. So that's another something that we both. I mean, you work with Burl. What trees that are old and maybe not healthy, and that you find the beauty in that. The same way that I might find the beauty in an old door that once was perfect and now no longer is, but it's beautiful in a different way. And we are, as human beings, we're all doing that. So it is a human and a living experience.
Yeah, I think that's another commonality between our work. We appreciate the imperfect. That's the name of the show, right? And how often I like this defect would make it a feature rather than try to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And I think it comes from the same motivation. Appreciate the fact that something has reflected experience and passage of time, decay of things. Nothing is permanent. Impermanence is things. So that's sort of another way to think of it. We have things we have to come.
It tells the story. Right? Like you said, if you cut through this wood and you see the tree's stories. Yeah, tell us.
I like Sheila's observation. The history, the history of a tree is literal. physical ones right there. The history of human experience is immaterial, but it's, it's very important.
The latter is also, I find very interesting, because I recently took a course at UConn about evolution, and there's an actual stellar ladder. So pre-dark ages, and then to, millions of years to, evolutions of it. And it reminded me, the ladder reminded me of that. There's an actual stellar, I think it's called stellar, it's called stellar ladder. That goes like this way, left to right, sort of. It's fascinating. And then you said something about shadow.
I probably did when I was talking about shadow and light.
Shadow and light,
sculptures.
Reminded me of the 13th century mystic poet Jalaluddin Rumi, who says, "No matter how fast you run, your shadow keeps up."
This for that.
Yeah.
When Richard and I first decided to kind of come together on this show, and put it together, we had a couple of meetings, and we didn't know if we would be making pieces together or how it was going to turn out. And so that was really fun in the beginning, going to each other's studios and like looking at what Richard had on his floors and shelves, and he came over and light bulbs and everything. But at one point, Richard came, you came to me and you had these two pieces of wood, these thin pieces of wood that had beautiful texture on them. And you said, "Is there anything we can do with this?" I can't remember if you said, "Is there anything you can do with this, or is there anything we can do with this?" Oh, wait, yeah. Is there anything we can do with this? And, you took them back, and the next thing I knew, whoa,
Wow, I know, that's
showed up.
amazing.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with that?
So the two prominent parts of that are slices from a burl that was given to me 4 or 5 years ago. And when I made a preliminary cut to divide it so that I could use it on the lathe, I had noticed a striking pattern. It's atypical for a cherry burl in that it's layered like an onion instead of being just disorganized tissue.
Wow.
But the pattern struck me, so I made 2 slices, put them aside. And then right away they warped. And I was dismayed because I like things to be plumb and straight and perfect. So I just set them aside and almost forgot about them. And in doing the kind of rummaging around that Jen talked about, I rediscovered these. I don't know if you were in the shop or not. But working with her allowed me to think, well, so they're warped. So what? Maybe we can do something with it anyway. And so I started to clean up the surface and discovered, and eventually playing with them, the idea that they look like wings came about, and that idea evolved into insects. So, and also felt totally permission to make the head out of a really wormy piece of maple that I had thought of making into a bowl, but it wasn't working right.
And then you juxtapose that shiny, fine, sanded wings with this kind of matte body. Kind of that difference. And how many hours did you spend sanding those wings? I just have to ask. Tell the people.
I regret not having kept track.
No.
I would think probably 15 or 20 hours.
Just doing the other. Wow.
Long time.
That's what it takes to get that gorgeous surface.
Oh, I know.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it takes maybe 5 cycles of rubbed oil to get to that point.
So Richard, you talked about that's a nice evolution from mentioned starting with goals and sort of say I love the goals that are imperfect. Is there anything else here that reflects that sort of evolution in your work?
You mean the work from?
Yeah, just that you're influenced from Jen of doing something a little bit more out of your comfort zone.
Well, I think I feel more able to run with things that are more messed up than I would have before. This trophy cup is an example of one that's, you know, I made it thinking it might turn into something, and I was a little disappointed. I had it out the shop, and then because of again, you know, this interaction with having a thought, gee, you know, maybe I like it, maybe somebody else like it too.
And you see
But
someone there.
those three pieces there that go together are actually practice pieces. I've got a piece of log that was partly burl, but not enough burl to really make proper burl pieces. And so I used pieces of it as practice in hollowing. Hollowing is a very, very difficult thing to do in wood turning. Working through a small opening to hollow out a bigger space inside. And there's some aspects of it that are extremely tricky. So I just use this wood as throwaway practice on. But I didn't throw it away. And again, you know, I thought, you know, in a context like this with Jen's work, maybe that was very interesting. I think they do turn out.
That's not the order.
People seem to like them, Richard.
Life isn't perfect.
That's what I was going to ask you. The title, Imperfect. As I look around, there is not one piece in here that is perfect.
Whatever that definition is.
Right.
My definition, right? But did you collaborate on that title to some
Yes.
degree?
Yeah,
We did. We did. We collaborated on everything seamlessly. But remember, we were on the phone and we were going back and forth with throwing out different things. And we almost settled on improving imperfection. Remember?
Yeah.
And then what do we think that sounded vain? How can you
Improving.
Yeah, improving the imperfection. I liked that, but imperfect
That's
solution.
presumptuous.
Exactly, that we could do that. But yeah, I think that's what we really wanted to bring out in the show. My aesthetic, for the most part, is a wabi-sabi, which is finding beauty in things that are imperfect, things that are in a state of decay or decline, things that are impermanent. So that's a major theme in my work, always, over the years, for the most part. Aside from the work I've really recently done, which is unrecognizable to this, it doesn't have the wabi-sabi effect. But that was, I think, what we were excited to bring out in this show.
One thing I have noticed about your work though, is that sometimes you juxtapose shiny, new-looking components with old, rusty, and wabi-sabi.
Uh-huh.
So I want to talk about that.
Conflict. Yes, conflict. That's what I'm trying to convey, I think, when I do that. And it does show up in a lot of the pieces. And the conflict, again, because I have this human emotion that usually is what inspires my work, my experience as a human being is one of conflict, of beauty and pain. And this the duality of what it is to be human, have those two things and hold them both. So I do like to take something that's kind of old and decrepit or something really bright and shiny and new. And because it just helps to bring about the duality of the human experience of beauty and pain. So yeah, that's usually why. Sometimes it just looks cool, and that works. Like with the this piece wide in the black doors. I had the mannequin arms are actually, they're not new, but they're certainly not very organic materials. And they're with this really old, soft door that I found in my parents' backyard. Again, I think it was an outhouse door. I don't know where, because you could see those two circular things used to be together. And that's a little bit of a collaboration, I have to say, because I had these doors and they were brown and they were just as I found them, which I found them to be perfect and beautiful. And I had them hung together in my studio, but they just weren't enough. And so one day when Richard was over, we were talking about them. I really wanted to kind of get one more piece done, but it wasn't coming together. And so we started to play around with it. We had them on the floor, and I think it might have been your suggestion to move one up. I'm going to give you credit for this, because I think it's due. It was Richard's idea. But when I moved the right one up, it creates that anatomical kind of curve that you guys can see. And all of a sudden, it really seemed to start saying more to me. And then the mannequin arms had been in my studio for 8 years at least. And I still didn't know what was going to do the door. I could just leave them. And then all of a sudden I said, what if I try this thing? And to me, it just worked. It just worked. It's like the other this is like a guilty confession. I stained the doors black because I felt I should do something to them. It wasn't because I wanted to. I just felt, these need more. And then the second I painted them black, I was like, why? They said to me, why did you paint me black? Why did you do it? And so that's really the name of that piece, not just why. It's why did you paint me black? And then the arms are kind of like, that one arm is like, why? Whatever.
Did you answer the question? Did you tell them why?
That's a really good question. I know why I did it. It was a should thing. I don't regret it now per se because I love the piece.
Yeah.
But I felt like I thought they were perfect before. Mm-hmm. So I felt like I should do something. So it was just those like, here I am blathering about that's how I feel about these things. I feel like I want to do something, it comes up, and then sometimes something falls into place.
So making perfect imperfect.
Yeah, brilliant mistakes. Sometimes.
I remember the point after which Jen painted it black, and her expression at the time was, "Oh my God, I may have made a big mistake." I said, "I don't know."
No.
We talked further on what to add to them, and we went back and forth a bit, and then sometime later texted me, "I have it." It's one of those
you were on the right with me.
inspirational things, and it was fun to watch the process. But if you look at it now, in the light, the black boards are gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's such detail, such exquisite detail. I think had she not painted it, you might be distracted or more engaged by the wood than the pieces or the juxtaposition of the pieces. And so I think it turned out well.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thanks for your help.
I could see them on a white wall.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. I would prefer if the owl would make them all white.
I see that.
We were like white walls.
I have a comment.
Sure.
I always find I have a deeper appreciation for an artist's work when I get to listen to the artist's work. And so often that's not the case. You come in, you see a show. So I commend Powell for taking the time to do this for people who are going to watch this later or listen to it later with a better understanding of it works.
So we had
Congratulate you guys.
We had some poetry folks here last week, and I felt the same way because I don't really understand poetry, but as soon as they started speaking about how they created it, it's like, whoa.
Yeah. It's nice to have a chance to talk. I'll just speak for myself about my work because it's not necessarily obvious, or easily understood. So I really appreciate the chance to talk about it and people understand a little bit more where it comes from. Thank you.
And we don't have to entirely understand it anyway. It's just sort of what it does to us, well, metaphorically and internally. You know, there might not be understanding or, you know, words that, oh, this is what it's like. Wow. Look at that. And, yeah.
Maybe that's one thing about art.
And that's poetry too. You don't have to understand it.
Although the artist may have certain intentions or a message to
Mhm.
convey,
Right.
once it goes on a wall, the artist is no longer in control of how it's interpreted.
Yep.
And
Excellent.
you know, the viewer can get many more things from it
Mm-hmm.
than anyone else thought about. Maybe that's what art is.
Such a great point.
Yes.
Well put, well said.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, that's
Thank
very
you.
well said.
It's-
Yeah.
It is so true. All I really want is for someone to stand in front of a piece of my artwork and feel something.
Yeah.
That's all I want, just to feel
Right.
something, a connection, something. That would be my one goal.
And I don't know who said this, but art and poetry teaches us what we didn't know we already know. We didn't know we knew it.
There's one difference between both of them.
Uh-huh.
We both like walking in the woods and picking up natural objects, but I think, Jen, you more often will end up in an old junk pile.
Literally,
Decaying
I was in one
human-
today.
Human object that I would do. I would step over, you know, keep looking at the tree. but it's I'm fascinated by the way you find useful.
That is, the found objects is another thing that definitely is my thing. And so yes, I'm always scanning, whether I'm in a city, whether I'm in the woods, whether I'm in a junk store or a junk pile, I am, constantly scanning. I just spent a magical 24 hours in the woods with some beautiful people. And in my mom and dad's backyard, we spent an overnight, and there's literally a bottle dump that is just unearthing unimaginable treasures. Just old pieces of bottle and metal and just things that had a life. And they're just so wabi-sabi, so ready to be put on the wall and tell a story, that it's just so exciting. It's my favorite thing to do. And I know that you find objects because people put them on your doorstep and you stumble over them.
Oh, that's sometimes.
People bring you away with that.
Yeah.
That's nice.
I used to spend more time scavenging for my materials. Typically, it would be, always trees that are already down. But often, at least in the beginning, it was, the story was a utility company would cut down a tree by the side of the, chop it into several pieces. And then the firewood scavengers would come by and take all the straight grain stuff. And the stuff that was left over was gnarly and partly rotten and messed up. And those were the pieces that attracted me most.
So you're a
over the
scavenger
years,
too.
over the years, yeah, over the years, I've collected a lot of wood that I haven't been able to use here. And as Jen mentioned, some people bring me these, sometimes without warning. And just there's so much wood and so little time. There's no shortage.
And sometimes, excuse me, one thing, sometimes people will commission you, they have a special tree, right? And they'll commission you to do pieces out of their special tree. That's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah, that happens too. My wife's cousin in southeastern Massachusetts had to take down a very ancient load sugar maple tree on their property because it couldn't. And so they asked me if I'd make a memento for the promise. So I drive up. And I ended up coming back with about 500 pounds of wood. You know. So I made it a piece. I have all this other wood too. So that's another way to get that material.
Would you describe in 1990 what prompted you to make your first piece from the old log, the piece of firewood?
Well, I had been making furniture in my basement as a hobby, mostly for use in the house. And it was an interesting challenge. I liked that. And at the time, I was making a large cupboard. And I guess that conjoined with the opportunity to attend an auction where some tools were being sold, ended up making me interested in the lathe that was being offered there. So I bought it and used it to make bone feet for the cupboard. But right away, as soon as, I had some other tools, but nothing like this. But as soon as I started doing things with the lathe, somehow the three-dimensionality of it caught my interest. And flat boards, were sort of boring. So that's how it started. I made 4 or 5 pieces from a branch of a walnut tree. I still have them. And, one of them looks halfway decent, the other are so. So amateurs. Somebody.
Maybe you could talk about it. I've just been reading a lot about flow lately, like when you're really in that zone of creating. And do you feel like that's something that arises for you?
I would say yes. I would say, it kind of, for me, it kind of comes and goes a little bit. I might not, I might have a long period where I'm not really working on anything, and then I'll have a wave of really wanting to get things done, and I'll definitely go from different mediums. Like historically, it was copper tubing, and everything was out of copper tubing, then doors, and then driftwood, and for this show, boxes and rusty tools. So yeah, and then there's like a little lull. The ostrich eggs were a phase. So it's like, for me, it's a little bit about phases. And then when I get into the phase, I have a period of excitement and creating and finishing work. And then maybe another little for a while.
Well, I remember the Epiphany that came out when I was still working. I had a real job, and it's been fairly stressful. And I would go down into the basement to my workshop, evenings and weekends and work. And there was one night I remember that I was working at the lathe, and I looked up, and 2 or 3 hours passed. I had no idea. I had been so engaged in work, and I snapped out of it. Oh my God, I wish I could do this all the time instead of my real job. So that's when I decided, that was a good example. I still get into that mindset fairly frequently. I just lose myself. And it usually has to do with the the spinning away. That's what I was
There really is nothing better than being in the flow. Any kind of art. Is when you're just in it and you're there and you have the time and space and you're just, it just feels amazing. Gift.
We're very lucky.
Yeah, we're very lucky. I feel lucky to be an artist. And I felt like a risk to call myself that, but it's my truth. It feels good. I feel lucky. And I do too.
Yay.
Thanks for doing this with me.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. Inspiration.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks for,
Thanks, Owl.
Thank you. Oh my goodness.
thanks to
Our
Al
pleasure.
for this opportunity. It's very nice of you.
It's wonderful.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Yes.
Maybe you guys could have a buddy movie and like take the show on the road.
Oh, we had such great feedback on the show.
Let's take the show.
It
over.
was so great.
It's really fun to hear artists talk about their work to each other when we share some of the commonalities.
I
I
haven't,
feel very instructive.
yeah, that was another reason I wanted to do it. I wanted to know you as an artist more. I want to be with artists more. I want to talk with artists about process. And then, so this was an opportunity to do that with someone that I respect. So that was one of the really wonderful things that came out of this, is just spending time with you. And learning. Wow.